Well, looks like we finally made it. The Emperor sent us on a very special mission to a brand new planet, one that is full of Nurgle simps. A disease-ridden hellscape that is chock to the absolute brim of every single corner of this continent, with the forces and worshippers of chaos. A true blight and blunder among the stars. Even orbiting above its surface brings me great nausea and disgust. And that is exactly why we'll be taking a page from Void's book and using a planet-destroying weapon against them. Our mission is to drop this precious cargo off on the surface and get the hell out of here before it detonates. Well, that can't be good. Let's see what all the hubbub's about, eh? Oh my god. What the hell is this? A ship? No, a station? So large that it takes up the entire map. Well, it isn't one of ours, that's damn sure, and it isn't Void either. But it is getting closer. So we are gonna have to think fast here and do something about it. But truly, the only thing I think we can do is attempt to retreat. If we don't get the hell out of here ASAP, our cruiser is going to be nothing but dust. Our engines roaring to life to get us to safety. Our shields being bombarded by heavy laser weaponry, easily evaporating away under the sheer force of the station's mighty power. Our hull being thrashed and beaten like a drum. If we could just hold out a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. Well, looks like we made it out in one piece. Or separate pieces, I suppose we should say. But on the bright side, thanks to what is left of this section of the ship, it seems that everyone did make it out without dying or really even all that serious of injuries. No doubt thanks to the tough interior and exterior of the Hammerhead cruiser design. It would appear that our world-ending device has also made it out safe and sound. Luckily, and obviously, because if it detonated, none of us would be here. It also appears that our Battle Brothers section in the control room didn't land anywhere nearby. We can only hope that they made it out alive, and wherever they are, that they're safe. It seems a large battalion of the forces of chaos, plague bearers, and horrors beyond your imagination have our squad pinned down. Vile creatures with a thirst for corruption and blood. But they would not continue to stand against us for long. It's just as the Emperor told us so, and just as we had suspected from orbit, Papa Nurgle has his claws deep into this planet. And it must be eradicated. We would need to begin tending to our wounds. As you saw, they did end up getting the better of us, even if for only a few moments. And the fact that we had sustained quite a few injuries on our impact with the planet didn't help anything anyhow. This part of the ship definitely isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And now that we've had a moment to turn on our transponders, it would seem that we have landed pretty far apart from the other section of the ship with our Battle Brothers. Speaking of which, they would begin using some of the excess steel that's lying around on the ground caused by the impact with the ground as well to go about building some power cables, getting the ship's fission reactor connected back up with everything else. Obviously, we're not going to be flying anywhere, but at least this way we have some proper lighting to work on things. And this would also get the ship's weapon systems back online. Now, most of these are not going to be able to attack any ground enemies, but if we have any enemy ships coming from above or transport pods, they should be able to stop them. As for our command center, there was basically nothing here worth keeping, and we wouldn't be able to carry it all, but we also didn't want the enemies to get their hands on the weapon systems or anything like that, so we ended up deconstructing it. And then things like our computer core, as well as advanced components and other things that we could haul with us on our journey, we would end up taking just in case. We would begin making our way south, and we ended up spotting a road not too far away, but we would have to go through enemy territory to get to it. A small camp and or settlement slash town of Nurgle worshipping freaks and what appear to be orcs, but I think they very well may be some type of mangled abominations instead. Either way, chaos worshipping monsters. As we were traveling on the road, we realized the only way to the other side would be to go through their little town here. We decided to cautiously and quietly sneak up to a nearby hill to begin planning our assault. And when the time seemed right, we would strike. We jumped out from around the mountain here and began firing at them. Unfortunately, their forces began to pool up in one large group and begin trying to attack us from the right flank. Our only option would be a strategic retreat to some smaller rock chunks with our backs to a toxic waste lake. I'm afraid that this was our only choice, but after the battle raged on for several hours, we had managed to kill enough of these bastards that they began to flee. While many would end up getting away, some others were not so lucky, like many of those lying on the ground in an injured, incapacitated state who would be slaughtered by us. Ah, yes, combat stims. This would explain how they were fighting so ferociously. These could come in handy for the future. As we began torching the rest of their camp, we decided we should probably search through some of these buildings first, and I'm quite glad we did so as we found a weapons cache. Within, we could find several pathetic feral firearms, but also several chainswords. Hard to say how they got their disgusting little mitts on these, but I'm quite glad that they did, as they'll be very useful for us. Nevertheless, though, we must continue in our journey to make our way towards the other squad. No doubt, though, due to the rudimentary nature of these simple roads, this journey will still take many a day. So, in the meantime, with the secondary squad here, we're going to have to get to work. We immediately began building some smelters with what little bit of steel and components we currently had. That way we could go about smelting down all of these steel slag chunks that fell off of the ship, and thus giving us plenty of resources to work with. In the meantime, our enslaved pirates would also go about repairing what was left of the hull of the ship. And if you can't guess already, the reason that we're doing all this is to try and protect our doomsday device. During our repair efforts, we ended up having a lady wander into the area. Now, at first, we were a little bit worried as we thought that she might alert the locals as to what was going on here, but taking a better look at her, I don't think that she's seen much of anything. We decided that we would speak with her, and upon further inspection, she told us some type of story about how she was here to help us and that she could feel that we needed her assistance as she has some type of healing power. Well, I don't know about you, but to me this sounds like a filthy, warp-loving, chaos-worshipping, degenerate filth. As we murdered her in cold blood, she let out a horrific-sounding scream. It would seem that we were right not to trust her all along, but even in death, she has somehow alerted the Chaos worshippers and forces of Chaos to our location. Looks like we're gonna have to rush our construction efforts after all. To begin, on the northern point of this section of the ship, we're actually going to begin building some cabins for everyone to sleep in. Now, unfortunately, our slaves do need their own personal rooms, otherwise they'll have mental breaks as they don't have the mental fortitude of our clone marines. Still though, it's nothing too special as we hope to not even be here in a few days when the planet explodes. Finally, utilizing much of the steel that we've been smelting, we would actually begin building on and or repairing this section of the ship to its former glory, although we're not actually building out of ship hull, simply some steel walls that are not near as durable. Nurgle. But the idea is to simply keep enemies from wandering in here and attacking our Doomsday device, as well as any other components that we need, like our fission reactor. Just as well, around the engine bay, we began building some proper defenses. Now we're actually going to build some uranium slug turrets that are meant for out-of-atmosphere combat. They'll be great for air defense, and even if the enemies are at a good distance away, they should help us out quite a bit. The biggest downside, though, is once enemies get too close, they won't be able to fire anymore. Now this is a very common drawback that is very common in other types of turrets as well, such as our barrage cannon turrets, which if you get too close they can't fire, but if they catch you at a distance, you might as well just disintegrate yourself because they're going to do it for you. To help counteract these issues with distance, we would also put in several auto cannon turrets as well as mini turrets. And as our resources began to dwindle, this is all we seemed to be able to muster in terms of automated defenses, and I think that was pretty good for what we had. But there was still something pretty crucial missing. A proper shield generator was in order, especially since we had lost our previous one after our little fall from grace. With this, we should be able to easily stop any aerial assaults, as well as any that are outside the shield, even just bullets or rockets or anything they could really throw at us. But with danger quickly approaching on the horizon, no doubt, we decided to go about arming our slaves with our acquired Covenant weaponry. Now, I do realize that arming our enslaved pirates isn't exactly the safest idea, but I'm pretty sure we could take them if they were to rebel, and on the other hand, with how dangerous these chaotic forces are that are attacking us, not only is them being armed their only chance at survival, but it may very well be ours too. But by this point, our food reserves were beginning to get dangerously low, and we were beginning to think that if the other squad didn't make it in time, we might have to try to find a way off this planet without them. But just in the nick of time, speak of the devil, they have finally arrived. I can't tell you how good and reassuring it felt for us all to finally be together once more as a squad, and under the leadership and guidance of our captain once again, no less. Now we just need to get out of here before that happens. Uh-oh. Well, my friends, it would seem that our enemies have brought quite the army for us to battle, consisting of plague bearers wielding large feral machine guns, the feral worshippers themselves, demonic beasts of the warp, and even marines of the Death Guard, Papa Nurgle's prize picks. This will be anything but easy. We would quickly rush to our defensive lines to protect our ship, and together with our automated defenses, we would begin an absolute onslaught of bullets against our enemies. As the rain would fall and dampen the leathery skin of these demonic foes, we would have to engage them in melee combat, ripping them to shreds with our chain swords. Their plague bearers and feral worshippers would mount quite a defense on our right flank, firing at us from each side now. All this while their monstrous marines would attempt to get up close and personal, attacking our pirate slaves. We had been completely surrounded, and we were still trying to hold out as best we can, but their sheer numbers were overwhelming us, and then one of them decided to... Our Marines were becoming severely injured, but this would not stop us from continuing this fight. If we were to die, we will die swinging, by God. In the name of the Emperor, we shall cast our foes into the deepest pit of the abyss, even if it means that we have to go with them. However, luckily, it doesn't seem that that'll be necessary today. Ryan here was the last of our remaining pirate slaves, as the other two unfortunately were killed in the explosion from the plague bearer, so we rushed him inside to tend to his wounds. Even with the majority of the Chaos forces defeated, the battle still raged on, as we had several plague bearers and other demonic forces in the area. All the while, we were attempting to stop a large fire from detonating our world-ending device. But as we were distracted, our enemies would make their way inside our ship to attack the device as well as our Marines. We had to do something to stop them and to cast them out. As the captain and the others began rushing to the area to reinforce them, something a bit surprising happened. One of the plague Marines came back to life I suppose Nurgle has a stranglehold over them even in their final death. Perhaps even more surprising though is the fact that Ryan here, even after being severely injured, took up arms once more to help out his captors. But after once more clearing out the ship and putting out the fires, we were victorious. The massive onslaught of chaos forces were defeated, and we were free to destroy this planet, to cleanse it of these disgusting parasites. Though, even with our victory, there was still much sacrifice. Our brother Booth had been killed during the battle, his armor completely shredded by countless hours of fighting, and it had eventually succumbed, and as did he. He was our brother, he was our friend, and he was a damn fine soldier, a true warrior of the Empire. Given the circumstances, the best that we could do for him was to dig a hole and to bury him properly. But we would have no time to mourn his death, as within about a day or so, this heavenly body was going to be nothing but space dust. So we immediately began deconstructing portions of the starship that we could. That way we could go about building ourselves a small but fast and very agile corvette. It wasn't much, but it would get us off the planet in time. Unfortunately, this does also mean that we'll have to leave the majority of our resources, weapons, and everything else behind, but perhaps we could get some use out of them before we left. I'm not going to beat around the bush. You know just as well as I know that we made some large nuclear warheads, and plenty of them, I might add. And with that, my friends, we're off. Finally, once again in orbit around the planet, but we couldn't just up and leave this system so soon, as we still had one gigantic threat left to deal with. Chances are, if we don't stop that massive space station, they'll probably stop the planet from being destroyed, and even if they don't, once this planet is destroyed, they'll just move on to the next. So using our small and agile corvette, we would begin making our way there. Immediately upon our arrival, just on the outside of this station shell, we could hear a grand, muffled battle taking place on the interior. Utilizing our weapons to attack the airlocks, we would begin making our way inside. At which time, we witnessed the ship's mechanoid defense force attacking what appeared to be several horrific figures. Oddly enough, during this battle, I witnessed that many of the feral forces were unable to control their shambler monsters that they had created. Nevertheless, if I had to guess, I would say that the forces of chaos have taken over this station, and its security forces are now beginning to fight back. Lucky for the mechanoids, reinforcements have arrived, but unfortunately for us, they were none too pleased to have our help. Oh well, I suppose we're just going to have to kill everyone then instead. No doubt this station's going to be extremely difficult to navigate, especially with all these warring factions, so we decided to drop a nuclear warhead to clear them out a little bit. To our shock and horror, the ship's Archotech structure could easily contain even a nuclear warhead's blast, simply destroying the smaller hull. If we plan on destroying this ship, it looks like we're going to have to find another way to go about doing it. But we would continue making our way through the station, fighting tooth and nail for every single inch that we took. By this point, our pirate slave Ryan was severely injured, and to be honest with you, it's a miracle he survived this long, so we decided to let him hang back, tend to his wounds in a safe area, and then get back in the ship so he could have it ready for our grand escape. But as our squad of brothers would continue pushing through the station, eventually we would end up finding one of the antimatter reactors. Chances are there's probably quite a few of these on the station. If we could manage to get them to go boom, the station would follow suit, no doubt. We would leave Jam and Moggy behind to attack the reactor and get it down to just enough health before it exploded, while the others would continue. Eventually, Collins and the captain would make their way to the center of the station, the control room. Within this room, there was essentially a full war going on between the Ferals, forces of chaos, and of course the mechanoid now is attempting to defend their station, and we even spotted quite a few Plague Marines, one of which just so happened to be the infamous Ox. The Empire and even the Emperor has a very long history with him, and he is very, very dangerous. So naturally, to test ourselves, we decided to attack him and his entourage head on. Blaster bolts, bullets, and everything and anything in between flying by our heads as our chain swords clashed in a mighty fight. This bastard has evaded the Empire for far too long. Once finished up with the reactors, Jam and Moggy would then enter the control room, where they would also end up finding several Archotech computers and drone cores that were keeping the station afloat. We could try to hack them to take over the station, but that would take far too long. A much better plan would be to destroy these damn dirty machines, and that way we could sink this ship. Utilizing our blasters and even our swords, that's exactly what we began doing, shredding every single component of these machines. And with that, the engines began to fail. The station was about to fall back into the planet's atmosphere and be ripped to shreds, and to be destroyed once our doomsday device goes off. Now, the only thing left for us to do was to get the hell out of here before it all went down. I managed to get Ryan, Moggy, and Jam all back out to the Corvette, but I'm afraid for Collins and even the captain himself, it may be too late. Locked in a brutal stalemate with the Plague Marine Ox, I'm afraid that the captain would turn off his transponder. The team knew what they had to do. It was time for them to leave. The captain would be staying right here. Critically damaged, the antimatter reactors began spewing geysers of flames as they were overheating. It eventually came to a boiling point. The station would implode in on itself and begin descending towards the planet, but it would never hit the surface. Our mission was a complete and utter success, at the cost of the lives of 2 of our battle brothers and our captain. True heroes of the Empire, and even our pirate slave Ryan didn't do too bad himself. Perhaps a promotion is in order. They say clones are expendable, but I think they're heroes.